This is the 11th lesson in a big series where I'm teaching the top 25 jazz standards for guitar players. There's a link to a playlist of this entire series in the description. The song that we are learning today is number 11 on this list, and it is the song All Blues by Miles Davis. You can practice everything you learn here along with a custom all blues backing track that I made for you with me comping so you can feel like we're jamming together. There's a link to that backing track in the description. Here's what we're going to cover in this lesson. First, I'll tell you about the song All Blues and why it's worth learning. Then I will teach you the melody by clearly demonstrating it on the guitar with notation and tab on the screen. We'll do a theory analysis of All Blues to determine what's going on in this tune because most people play this differently than it was intended to be played. So we'll talk about that. I will show you the bass line and how to comp on this tune in a specific way. I think the rhythm part, the accompaniment part, is a little more recognizable, a little more of the identity of the song, even more so than the melody. Of course, they go together, but it's really fun to play it on the guitar, so I'll show you that. I'll teach you the modal scales you can use to improvise over all blues, all with demonstrations and scale diagrams on the screen. Every lesson in this series includes a unique piece of advice for how to truly internalize a jazz standard on the guitar, so I will share that. And lastly, I'll give you a guitar listening recommendation for this song. All Blues is a modal jazz blues composition by Miles Davis, recorded in 1959 on his legendary album called Kind of Blue. That album marked a major turning point in jazz history, shifting the focus away from complex chord changes towards modes and more melodic freedom. And All Blues is one of the album's most accessible and widely played tunes. It's considered a modal jazz tune because it centers itself around the Mixolydian mode for most of the form, and it switches to G Dorian mode for a small portion of it instead of going to the normal 4-chord that a blues does, making it the perfect tune to practice improvising with in a modal context, yet kind of in a familiar context at the same time, that is the blues form. All Blues is also great for getting comfortable improvising in a 6/8 time signature. Since so much of what we play is in 4/4, it's great to get used to these other time signatures when they come up in these classic standard songs. So we're going to be playing in a 6/8 time feel, and it also features a unique turnaround at the end of this form that can be deceptively tricky to solo over, very tricky to solo over, and goes away from the modal scales in that moment. And we'll talk about what to do over that. It's a really cool sound. Let's dig in and learn the melody of All Blues. So here's the melody. We have this 8 here. That means we are reading it as if it's guitar notation, which means technically we are reading transposing down an octave from what's written as if it was written in concert pitch. We're playing it down an octave from that. That's guitar notation. I mentioned that in my last video in this series in a little more depth. Now we have this D to B figure here. And I really think of that as the melody. It looks a lot more is going on there because we have this little ornamentation, embellishment note going up to C and back, going up to C and back. The rhythm is different. This is transcribed off the original recording, which is the thing to do. But it feels clear to me from his playing that this C is just this ornamentation, this embellishment, as if B is really the melody note, is really the main note. And if you did have just a plain melody like that, you're just sustaining B, it would be a natural thing to play with it a little bit, right? So that's how I hear it, as opposed to taking this really seriously or needing that rhythm to be exactly right. So that's kind of worth pointing out. We go to this is a significant note here, this B flat, and we'll talk about the G minor here and what's happening here modally in the theory analysis section of this video, and when we're working on the scales, of course, as well. But that's pretty much it. I just wanted to point out those couple things. I like to point out if there's anything worth saying. Let's just play the melody with tabs on the screen for you so you can learn it that way now. So I'll play you the melody, and I encourage you to use this section to practice along with my demonstration. If you're working on getting it down, there will be guitar tab and notation on the screen as I play, so you can see exactly where on the fretboard I recommend first learning how to play this melody. Here it is at 130 beats per minute. let's talk about the chords. Let's talk about the harmony. Is this G7 really? Well, this tune is interpreted as really more of a standard, typical blues so often because that is just the world we're familiar with. But Miles Davis was innovating. This is a modal jazz tune. This is a modal blues tune on this album that was a concept album. And if you watched my second video in this series, if you haven't, then check it out. It's about impressions / also So What, and how that tune is written as D minor 11. And that is not exactly accurate to put a chord symbol that comes from tertiary harmony, which means 1, 3, 5, 7, built off of thirds, when modal jazz is often harmonized in a different way where you're actually thinking of just a mode kind of home bass. So this is more intended to be a G mixolydian home bass as opposed to a strict G7 chord. So these chord symbols are borrowed from functional harmony. G7 implies that it is having a function, and in the blues it really does. It's going to the 4 chord, and this is so often played going to C7, and in the real book it's written as C7. But this is really just a mixolydian sound here. And yes, it's very much a blues. It's this genius way of combining this new modal sound with the old traditional blues. So G mixolydian is a collection of notes. It's just like a major scale, but it has a flat 7. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, and 1. And the root is G, and it has a G7 sound, but it's not the same as a functional G7. Now, usually in the blues, we go to a 4 chord here. This would be C dominant 7. This is how it's often played. This is how it's often written. The reason it is G minor 7 instead is just from listening to the way it's interpreted in the recording. And I will show you this, and this will become very clear when I show you the rhythm part, which is so fun to play on the guitar. The accompaniment part that the horns are playing are really emphasizing a note that takes away from this functioning as C7. And the bass line, which is also a quintessential part of the sound of this song, and I'm going to teach you that as well. So you're going to learn the bass line, how to play the accompaniment part that's kind of a composed part, and of course, we learned the melody as well. So obviously, this is Miles Davis. This is not your typical tune. This is not your typical standard. We're like, oh yeah, melody, chords, cool. We know what to do on this. There's all these other factors. And so the horns that are playing the accompaniment part are playing, emphasizing notes in such a way that make it clear that this is not C7. And also the bass line is playing the exact same thing it did here. So it's very much G. And you will hear people move to the C here, but in the recording, and so therefore, in the original vision of the song, there's this bass line, which you're going to learn, and you continue to play this bass line off of G here, and it fits over this. Now, is this G minor 7? No, it's G Dorian, right? So this is G mixolydian, G Dorian. We change one note to get this note, the B flat, and you'll hear even the first chorus of Miles Davis improvising, he plays that note and then targets this note here because those are the differences between those. So we're back to G mixolydian here. Now these chords are just crunchy, more functional harmony chords. This is a turnaround that is very much supposed to be the 5 chord, causing a lot of tension, and it goes up a half step, then down a half step, and then comes back here. And this is a very modal section here, rooted in G, and the accompaniment part I'm going to show you is really fun to play, and it doesn't even really sound like G7. It's very much more of a modal kind of G mixolydian. If you want to learn more about modal stuff, check out my video on quartal chords. I'll put a link to that in the description. Check out my videos on So What, the song, and I'll put links to those in the description as well. And of course, check out the playlist of this whole series and go to video number 2 to see the impressions lesson, and you'll learn more all about that. This one is really tricky because it's not so obviously explicitly a modal tune, and so often it's not played that way. So for me at least, once I interpreted it as more of a modal tune, I was able to play on it so much more freely. And that's what makes it special and what makes it fun. So that's our little theory analysis. Let's go into learning the bass line and the accompaniment pattern and that stuff. If you're going to learn this song, know the bass line and know the accompaniment pattern, and that's what we're going to teach you right now. So here's the bass line, just so you hear it first. I'm doing a little palm muting, just barely touching the strings right next to the bridge to get that kind of muted sound. It's how guitarists often will mimic a bass line, just so it sounds a little punchier. So what's happening here is we got 1, 5, 6, 5, flat 7, 5, 6, 5, 1, 5, 6, 5, flat 7, 5, 6, 5, 1. Okay, those are all notes in the G Mixolydian scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. Okay, so that's that bass line. Now, when it goes to what would be the 4 chord, right? Measures 5, measure 6, where it would go to a big C, like it maybe would sound like this in a traditional blues. You know, going to that, the bass line actually just continues here. Okay, so I said the accompaniment pattern is emphasizing a note that makes it not really C. Well, this note is the same one, so the bass line is doing it as well. So that's really a strong note in the bass line, and it is the 4 chord of C. So we're not really having a clear C7 chord for sure. Now, these all come from the same scale, right? G minor or G Dorian and C7, C Mixolydian, those come from the same scale. So if you play C Mixolydian here, you're playing the same notes. But are you thinking of it as C as the root, you know, or C really as the chord? It's not really functioning that way, because we got that really strong note there is the 4 of C7. So, okay, maybe it could be C sus4, but it's not, because it's really not going to the root of C. It's not even playing the C root at all. It's not even playing C, so it's staying there. So it's really more a G Dorian kind of sound, and not even G minor 7, but G Dorian. Okay, so that is the bass line. And that's happening the whole time, except for that. You can just play the roots here if you're, you know, if you are playing the bass line. Okay, so know the bass line. Now let's talk about the accompaniment pattern. So here's what the 2 horns are doing in the accompaniment part in the song. The 3rd of G Mixolydian, the 5th of G Mixolydian, and then playing in thirds. And by the way, this is such a classic blues thing. Quick side note, it's kind of coming from this, or it's amazing that, you know, Miles Davis can take these classic traditional sounds and then innovate with it so much. I do think of it as being rooted in that old school kind of blues, where this, you got the root and it's going 5, 6, flat 7, 6, 5, 6, flat 7, 6. Forgot to mention that when I was talking about the bass line. But let's go back to this, because it's doing the same thing. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so now we have these horns playing these notes: minor 3rd, major 3rd, minor 3rd. And the middle one is short, long, short, long, short, long. Okay, and then when it goes to that 4 chord spot, which is going to the G Dorian sound, it just changes this note to this note, and that's it. The rest is the same. And they make the middle notes long instead, so everything's connected there. And then back to. Okay, makes sense. Just in thirds there following. Now, what I like to do on the guitar is to add this note. So it does have the flat 7 of the G Mixolydian scale there. And then have the root here. So now we're just filling it out more for the accompaniment. So bar, strings 4, 3, 2, and then putting those 2, the 3rd finger and 2nd finger down on fret 7 and 6. So just fills it out a little more as a guitar part. So that's how I tend to play it. And then I'll do just barring there, and then still have your first finger on G there. And of course the top has to be the horn part itself. I love that sound. And then back to. Okay, then the turnaround is root. It's going to be a dominant 7 sharp 9. Okay, this is dubbed the Jimi Hendrix chord sometimes. We got a root, 3rd, flat 7, sharp 9. Okay, and the melody up here is the 5, is the natural 5. So this is a full dominant 7th chord, 1, 3, 5, 7 with a sharp 9. A very interesting chord. It's not exactly an altered chord because an altered chord doesn't have a natural 5. Check out my video on the altered scale and I talk more about that. There's a link to that in the description, but you're gonna play root, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, boom, and then chord, this is dominant 7, sharp 9 chords. It's relevant to talk about that it has the 5 in it. We're going to talk about what scale that comes from and all of that. But here's just the chords themselves. I'll play it one more time for you. Root, chord, chord, chord. And then instead of going back to this, there's a very modal thing happening here where we get this kind of sound. Okay, so on the top, this is happening in the recording. But that's the melody on the top, so I don't need to play the melody. I like to play these voicings. This is like a stacked 4th voicing right here. Fret 5, 5, 6, then up 5, 5, 6, and then play fret 3, 4, 5. So, and then back. And it adds so much color to it, and it very much sounds modal at that point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I like the I like how it lands back at the beginning, and it really sounds like an arrival point after this quartal harmony there. Okay, here's that whole thing, so you hear it, and this is what I've done in the backing track as well for you. And it goes on and on. If you want to blues it up a little bit, you can play this and then hammer on that 3rd. It's kind of fun. I used to do that a lot, but I stopped doing it because I want it to be more modern, more modal, and less trying to make it be a blues. So that's the accompaniment part. Definitely learn that if you're going to know this song, because it's really a part of the sound. Next, I'll show you the scales you need to be able to improvise and solo over the all blues chord progression. I'll demonstrate and show you diagrams on the screen while I'm playing, and they'll be in one specific position because I like to play all my scales in an overlapping position so I can connect my ideas together before I branch out on the rest of the guitar. We're going to do the modes and scales for this. Let's jump to the screen view so I can explain that first. So here's the sheet that shows the scales that the harmony comes from. It says complete scales because I will do a simplified scales version of a lot of songs. This is all there is, though. We're not going to do a simplified version of this. We just want to work on these modes. So very much G Mixolydian, that is the same structure as C major. You can think of it as whatever structure you want to get the collection of notes coming out of your fingers and playing scale patterns, playing ideas with them, so long as you're not making it sound like C major, whatever. Think of it as anything you want. But G Mixolydian is kind of the concept there where G truly is the root. And then G Dorian, as I talked about, that's one note different where the B flat happens. I'm going to show you these scale shapes, of course, and demonstrate improvising with them. And then back to G Mixolydian there. And then here's where it's hard. This is straightforward back to G Mixolydian. These chords are really hard to improvise over. If you listen to the recording, especially Miles, he's just kind of playing these sustained notes there that fit, so here I advise, having to workshop it a lot, but playing by ear. What's a note that fits? Go up a half step, go back down. You'll hear that, in the recording a lot, as opposed to trying to figure out how to do scale runs on it. Now, The reason I have these scales listed here, D diminished half whole. Usually if I say diminished scale, I by default mean whole step, half step, whole step, half. I mean the whole step to half step version of a diminished scale. But this uniquely is half whole because this chord is so unique. It's a full dominant seventh chord, 1, 3, 5, and flat 7, also with a sharp 9. And the scale that does have all of those notes in it is the diminished scale half whole. So you start on D, you go up a half step, then up a whole step, then up a half step. Then check out my video on the diminished scale. You'll learn all about it if you want. It's one of my favorite videos on the channel. So if you're interested, that video is really great. So it's really tricky to do this, especially with this going up a half step and going back down. If we had a little more time, you could kind of workshop that. The other thing is, even though that chord comes from this scale, it still doesn't sound quite fitting all the time. It's cool to know about and I like using it, but it's not like, okay, I'm just going to rip it on that scale there all the time. So that's why I say know this. It's cool to know the theory of it, but you got to go by ear there. The other thing is that this falls apart a little bit because the note that sustains when it goes back here is not in this scale. So then it's kind of like, well, half whole diminished, and then maybe this is the altered scale instead, which is, if I was being really strict, I probably would say that. But it's just being so specific at that point. It's really just theorizing at that point. Is that going to help us make music? No, just the hands-on practice and going by ear here is going to help us the most. But if I did have to be specific, the half whole diminished scale here, the half whole diminished scale here, and actually the altered scale here, even though I wrote it as the half whole diminished scale. So those are fun to work on there, but almost impossible to kind of nail it with those and make it sound fluid, and especially in contrast to the modal playing there. So some experimentation will need to happen there. The rest of it should be just a free-for-all, super fun way to practice modal playing. Let me show you those scales on the guitar. So here is the G Mixolydian scale in the 4th and 5th position. This is where I teach everything and play everything, because if I learn all my modes and scales and chord tones and everything here and do it in every key on every song, then I'm literally playing every vocabulary shape possible on the fretboard that can just instantly be moved somewhere else. So it prevents me from avoiding certain physical forms and shapes, which of course I did for years and which most guitarists are doing, which leaves gaps on the fretboard and makes us interrupt our ideas and jump around and just not play fluidly. So I always do this, and that's why I teach them here. And here we want to specifically play in the with the root to root method, because we are doing a mode and we want to feel G as the root. We don't just want to play the C major scale. So the root to root method is playing on the root, repeating all the roots, not repeating or stopping on any other notes. So it sounds like this. Now, unless you've practiced that, it's going to feel like most guitarists are not familiar with the G Mixolydian scale in this scale form and really thinking of that as the root, because we so often are rooting ourselves off the 6th string or off the 5th string. So that's a great example of, well, according to my system, this is the system I teach thoroughly in my course called Nail the Changes, with chord tones and scales and everything, and explain all of that. It's how I finally got myself to play freely on the fretboard, and that's why I'm showing it to you here. So that's probably pretty unfamiliar, and we play it with the root to root method so we can hear it as Mixolydian. I'll play it one more time. Okay, so same with G Dorian. I bet most of us are unfamiliar with playing G Dorian here, thinking of the root as Dorian and really seeing that in that position. Because again, if you do know Dorian, you probably know it right here. And a little digression, where modes are often misinterpreted as just whatever the lowest note on the guitar is. Oh, that's the mode. Oh, so this scale shape is the Dorian mode. And then this scale shape is the major mode. And this scale shape is the Mixolydian mode, because the lowest note, but that's not at all how it works. The mode is however you are treating the root. So here's the G Dorian mode. Okay, we want to be able to improvise with those in that position. So those are those two modes. And then here is that D diminished half whole scale. I just kind of played it up and down, but starting on D. Same physical shape is going to be a half step up for that E flat 7. Okay, so that's the weirdness, is moving up and down with those and trying to play them. So I usually try to find a little spot or play chord tones for that. So here's the third of D7, here's the root of D7, here's the flat 7 of D7, here's the sharp 9 of D7, here's the flat 9 of D7. So just a little group of notes like that. Can be nice to just try to lock into and then move it up. And then move back to that G mixolydian. And so when you're improvising with those, just a little tiny spot and then moving it up a half step. Or just do and then move back. That's a lot of times what you hear Miles Davis doing. So now let me demonstrate improvising with those scales. In every video in this series, I'm giving you what I call an internalization tip to play songs more deeply, to learn these standards in a way that you truly have inside of you. So you're not just feeling like you're faking it. You're not just playing and pressing buttons on the fretboard. We want to increase our musicianship and really, truly express ourselves and be the musicians that we want to be and have the skill set that we want to have. Okay, that being said, this one is huge, and you won't be a surprise. You've heard people say it before. The absolute best thing you could ever do is learn off of recordings. Everything you ever want to learn about in jazz especially is in the recordings that you love, is in the recordings out there, is already in the players who have played these things and recorded them. Even if you feel like you don't have an ear at all for learning off of recordings, you got to jump in and try and just listen. So why did I teach this song differently than it's often taught or often written, or if you look it up in the real book, it's slightly different? It's because of the recording. And go, oh, that's what they're doing. Oh, listen to that. Listen to that accompaniment part. Listen to how, the bass line is playing the same thing the whole time. Yet people are always playing it, switching to the C7 chord and making it this more traditional blues, which is 100% legit. I'm careful not to say ever that someone is playing something wrong. That's really an important philosophy for me, because who cares? It's music, and you can do something differently intentionally. You can do it accidentally. Is it good? Do you like it? Are you having fun? So it's not like something's wrong if someone's interpreting something differently, but going to the source of the recordings, back to this internalization tip, back to the point being that it's the best thing for our musicianship that we could ever do. And even if you feel like you can't even find one note, believe me, your brain is trying to sort it out. I had a student once who gave him an assignment to transcribe off of the recording, and then we kind of checked what he transcribed every lesson. And at first, because he wasn't experienced with this, he was learning full melodies that were off from the melody, but they were harmonized with it. So he knew it sounded good. He knew it felt right, but it wasn't the right notes. Yet that practice, again, your brain is sorting it out over time. And it is amazing because you're just listening closely and just like, is that it? Is that it? Your brain can't help but figure it out over time if you do that. Is that the right note? Does that sound like it? And it's the most intimate way you could get involved with the recordings and the music. You'll hear everything in a completely new way if you do that. So by listening to this tune and saying, what's really happening there? What's really happening? That is, something that changes my own relationship with the song, and then therefore how I play it, therefore how I teach it. I feel more confident about it, but also just, transcribing solos or licks or note by note, tiny little things. And don't feel like it has to be some massive solo and learning the whole thing. Slow it way down or choose something that is really mellow already and just learn 2 notes off of it. And you'll just feel excited about having gotten that close to the recording. There's just something that feels good about it. So learning things off recordings, transcribing. So every tune you want to learn, I already have listening recommendations for every song, and they don't have to be my recommendations, but you should choose a favorite version of a song to just embed in your brain by repeating it and listening to it a ton, because you're going to get those sounds going. Learn something off of each of those recordings, right? So if you're going to know a standard, like if you're going to know any of the standards on this list that I'm teaching for this series, take your recording that you've chosen you like, maybe it's the one I'm suggesting, and any part of it, you can just, hey, let's just drop somewhere in the middle of the song. What's happening right here? What's that chord voicing? Can you hear it? Can you hear the individual notes and repeat it, repeat it, repeat it? Oh, there's that notes in there. Oh, they're not playing this way, this thing, the way everyone else plays it or whatever. Or just a couple notes here and there, or just the very intro lick or something like that. A tiny thing from any standard that you want to feel like you truly know or that you have ownership over. I highly recommend that. So that is my internalization tip for this video. And I'll just repeat, believe me, if you can't do it, just jumping in and trying to do it is the only way to get there. You can't wait till you can do it to do it, right? And the analogy I always think of is pull-ups. I joined a gym recently trying to get a little bit more in shape, and they do pull-ups there, and I couldn't do a pull-up at all. So they have all these, if you can't do a pull-up, then you got to hang on the bar. Like, oh, okay, just hanging on the bar is going to strengthen my arms to lead me towards eventually being able to, pull up just my shoulders a little bit. And that's what some people are doing. And then you pull up more and more. So if you can't do this at all, if you can't even find one note, you're just hanging on the bar. It doesn't look like you're moving, but you are strengthening. I promise you're strengthening that. And if you keep doing it, boom, eventually someday full pull up, you will find those notes. You will note for note be able to, play exactly what you have found off the record. So hope that helps motivate you if you're struggling with it. Hey, if you want the downloadable resources from this lesson, like those scale diagrams, like the scale lead sheets where it's showing you the chord progression and then the scales that go with each chord. I've never seen any other lead sheet like that. I'm sure other people have done it, but this is how I've helped students for a long time when I was teaching one-on-one lessons. Like, hey, let's write out what scale in this tonal center, what scale does every single chord come from, so you can have that in front of you and practice switching those scales. Well, if you want the PDF like that and also the chord shapes and almost everything that I showed in this video, I can't give away melodies to songs that I don't own the rights to, but some of the tunes in this series are public domain, and in that case, I'll give away the tabs and lead sheet and everything, but even when I can't, you can learn the melody very easily with the video that I made. But all the other resources I have as a downloadable pack and resources for other videos as well that aren't just in this series, and those are in my weekly lesson resources membership, which you can join at a very low cost and support the channel every month and get resources that go along with my weekly videos. There are links to join either on my site or through Patreon. It's the exact same thing. So if you love Patreon, I made that option for you as well. So if you want the resources that go along with this series and my other lessons, I hope to see you in that membership and that you'll consider becoming a supporter. And if not, that's totally fine. I hope you're enjoying the series, and I really appreciate you watching. Listening to the songs we want to play is super important. I just talked about that. If you want a specific jazz guitar listening recommendation for all blues, I recommend Julian Lage from his 2009 album called Sounding Point. This is about the time that I actually took a lesson from Julian Lage, right about that time. He has just always been a fantastic player. So it's cool to hear his playing because I'm a big fan of his and he's putting out so much great music recently. But to hear his playing back then, he's just virtuosic and amazing on this song. So that's the listening recommendation that I have for all blues. And I have a playlist of all of my listening recommendations for this series. There's a link to that in the description for YouTube and a link to a Spotify playlist as well. So make sure you listen to something. It could just be the original version. Listen to a version of this song on repeat if you're trying to learn it and you want to be serious about playing it well. Don't forget to use the backing track that I gave you. There's a link to that in the description as well. And make sure you're subscribed because I can't wait to see you in my next lesson where we will do song number 12 of the top 25 jazz standards for guitar players. And that song is going to be Solar. Hit that like button and please leave a comment to let me know if you liked this lesson. It really makes a difference for the channel and for the video, and it helps the video reach more people and more students who want to learn about this song. And maybe you'll jam with one of those people someday. Check out the description for all the links I mentioned and for how else you can support the channel. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for watching. Take care and happy practicing.